So today we have the Tzipa on Shavuos, the Chelek good test, we have those. It's very exciting to really break the down next to it. So, Israel starts when we go, they're like not only first, that's also like we're talking about in this time that there are three leaders of Israel that are connected to Shavuos. Aleph, Moshe Rabbeinu. First one is Moshe Rabbeinu. In him, you're given Torah on Bet, David Hamelach. David met that Torah. The second is David Hamelach. And it says David passed on Torah, which is a reference to the holiday. Gimel, about Shem Tov, the dance is talking by Shavuos. And the third one is about Shem Tov, who also passed on Shavuos. So, with three Israel, Moshe, David, and Balsam for all three.
Tzipa, yeah. I can't hear you very, very clearly. It's quiet.
Me either. It's very low.
Okay. You just make sure my microphone is set properly. Does this help at all?
I don't think so.
No.
I can hear you, but it's just very low.
No, I understand. I'm going to switch the microphone. I'm just never that's probably not what I'm going to happen. Okay, I just switched the microphones. Does that change?
Oh, yeah, that's much.
That's perfect.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll just start from the beginning because we're only like 1 minute in.
Okay.
So Aleph, the first paragraph, Nispar Kvar Pamim Rabot Asher Lekama Misnei Yisrael Shaychos Lazman Chag HaShavuos. So it's spoken about numerous times that there are numerous leaders of Israel that are connected to Shavuos. Aleph, Moshe Rabbeinu Shal Yado Nikna HaTorah b'Shavuos. The first one is Moshe. Through him, the Torah was given on Shavuos. Bet, David HaMelech, David met Batzeres. The second is David HaMelech, who passed away on Atzeres being an allusion to Shavuos. And Gimel HaBal Shem Tov, Shagam Histalkuso Hayta b'Shavuos. And the third one is the Baal Shem Tov, who also passed away on Shavuos. Bekevan Shakol Inyan hu behashgacha pratis, ubeprat k'shehamidabar hu odos me oros binogei la'am Yisrael bechlal, belegdulei nesiei Yisrael prat, muvan asher yesh nekuda mishutevet beinehem. So as we know that everything is hashgacha pratis, everything is personal divine providence. And specifically, if we're talking about something which is connected to the entire Jewish people, and even more so to the leaders of the Jewish people specifically, then obviously there must be a common theme between them, between these three people, Moshe Rabbeinu, David HaMelech, and the Baal Shem Tov. And Beis, L'nakuda Mishutefet Zo Yesh Kesher, L'tchuno Ha'ikari Shel Yom Zeh, U'B'minidun Didan Chag HaShavuos, Zman Matan Torah Seinu. So in addition to the fact that there must be a common thread between David, Moshe Rabbeinu, David, and the Baal Shem Tov, also it specifically must be connected to what we're speaking about, which in our case is the holiday of Shavuos. U'me'idach gisa, b'hechrach she'yach chidush b'ofen shabo nekuda mishutefet, zo kayemet b'kol echad mishlosha nisiyei Yisrael elu, devadei kol echad mishem b'lashon hashas richa. On the other hand, in addition to the fact that there has to be a connection between them, there also has to be something novel, a chiddush for each one, something that each one of these leaders brings unique to the holiday of Shavuos, because each one is needed, as it says in the language of the Shas Richa, meaning needed. So they're not connected to Shavuos for any repetitive reasons. Each one has a unique angle, yet they're also obviously interconnected as well. Beis, echad hanekutot hamishutefet shebein Moshe, David, v'Habal Shem Tov, hi shekol echad mehem haya lo rak melech v'nasi b'Yisrael ela b'zeh gufa rishon b'sug zeh shem melucha v'nesios. So one of the things that is unique between Moshe and David and the Baal Shem Tov is that each one was not just a king and a nasi, a leader of Israel. However, each one was Rishon Besug Zeh Shemalucha V'Nesius. Each one had a unique first, so to speak, in a specific category. Each one had a unique new approach or new capacity that characterized their leadership. So to start, Moshe Rabbeinu haya hanasi harishon. Moshe was the first nasi, the first leader, shel klal Yisrael, of the entire Jewish people. V'od zot al pi psak harambam, shemelech haya Moshe Rabbeinu hamelech harishon shel am Yisrael. As the Rambam writes, that there was a king. Moshe Rabbeinu was the first king of all of Israel. David haya rosh v'rishon lamalchus beis David. So David was the first one in the house of David. Dekevan shenimshach David zacha beketer malchus lo lebanim hazacharim ad olam. As it says that the crown was passed down in David's family through the males for eternity. Lo tekaret hamalucha mezer David laolam. And it will not be cut off from the line of David forever. So Moshe is the first general king, but David is the first of the house of David. And thirdly, the Baal Shem Tov haya rishon nisiyei Hasidus haklalis. And the Baal Shem Tov was the first in the way of Hasidus. Ba'al pi zeh muvanet hashaychus hamiyuchedet shel shlosha malachei v'nisiyei Yisrael elu v'nikudasam hamishutefet l'matan Torah. So through this, we're going to understand the unique and specific connection that each one of these leaders has to the giving of the Torah. Ki echad ha'inyanim ha'ikarim shenitchadshu b'matan Torah haya shekol echad ve'echad mibnei Yisrael na'aseh chelek memalchus kohanim shavim. So one unique thing that happened at Matan Torah was that each and every single individual, every single community member, every single regular person, they were made into royalty. As it says, they were mamleches hakohanim. They had, each person got a piece of the royalty of the kohanim, of the priests. V'hakoach lavi inyan zeh liyadei gilui nimshach l'kol echad miYisrael minisiyei Yisrael shebekol dor dilakaman. And this was the power, the strength to bring this concept through generation to generation would come through the leader, that each and every individual has this concept of royalty, that each and every individual is a part of mamlachas kohanim, the royalty of the kohanim, the royalty of the priests. Gimel, hashaycha shebein inyan mamlachas kohanim lamatan Torah, tuban behakdamas bior tochen inyan hamalucha. So to understand the connection of what does it mean, mamlechas kohanim, the royalty that we were each afforded, to Matan Torah, first we need to just back up and understand exactly what royalty is, in order to understand how this is connected to the giving of the Torah, that we're each one of us, each individual is brought up to the level of royalty. Hanakuda ha'ikari shel malchus hi. So what's the main thrust, the main concept of royalty is hitnasus, distinction or elevation. Hayos hamelech maram v'nivdal mekol am. The king is higher and he's distinct and he is elevated from the entire nation. As there are many details that show this, that express this concept. The first one, asur lo lahashpil atzmo v'lasot malacha. It's forbidden for him to humiliate himself or to do mundane work. Sarich l'sapek lo kol tzarcha v'harchava gdola. We as a nation are obligated to provide for the king everything he needs in abundance. It says a king with his with his beauty and his glory, you should lift your eyes. Shum Adam or Davar b'Medina ein bekoho la'akev es hamelech mimilu ritona k'maimar razal. Hamelech poretz geder v'chulo ein machlim biado amar melchuta chulo ikar turei v'od. No person or thing in the nation is allowed to prevent the king from fulfilling his will, from fulfilling what he desires to do. As the rabbis say, a king can break boundaries, etc. V'ke'ein zeh pa'al matan Torah b'bnei Yisrael, al yidei matan Torah na'aseh v'romamuso. Bnei Yisrael needs romamu v'na'alu l'mayla mikol am v'lashon. V'af l'mayla meha'olam b'chlal l'bilti hayos notnim tachat mamshelas gidrei hateva. So this is something that was actually accomplished for each and every single Jewish person at the giving of the Torah. Through the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people were elevated, and they were elevated above every other nation and every language. And actually, it says Lamala Meha Olam Bichlal. They were actually elevated above the world in general. That they were not subject to the rules of nature. As we're going to explore that a little bit deeper, but that is one concept of royalty, not subject to the regular rules that everybody else is. Bisagnon acher, in another way of understanding, B'sha'a she'Yisrael osin ritzono shel makom v'nohagim al pi Torah v'mitzvos b'shleimus. When a Jewish person keeps the Torah, they do the will of Hashem, and they act in the way of fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs in the fullest capacity. Hina lozo bilvad shmekablim as kol tarchehem b'harchava ela yeter alken. Ein ham strichlim lacharosh v'lizroa kulo malachtan asis al yedei acherim. So not only will their needs be filled in abundance, but even more. They won't even need to plow and to plant, etc. This work will be done by others. V'mashmut hadavar ve'avodas kol echad yisal befrat v'sheba lefanav inyan shel Torah mitzvahs al Yehudi linhog kemelech v'hakdish atzmo inyan zo ki'ilu lo hayu lo malachas v'dagos acheros. So what's the implication of this? How does this concept impact us? When a person is the individual service of a specific Jew, when he's approaching or when he's thinking about or when he's acting on concepts of Torah and mitzvahs, he should act like a king. You should see yourself as a king, to sanctify yourself to this matter, whatever the specific mitzvah is that you're dealing with, as if you had no other worries at all. As a person who has all their needs being met in abundance. Like a person who has all their needs being met. There's no worries, there's no complications, there's no setbacks, there's no hesitations. Like a king going forth. Ein l'chashbon she'al pi hateva limnoa mimeno asiyas mitzvah, kevan sheb'inyanim shel Torah mitzvos Yehudi hu ba'olam haba melech al hateva. And don't think about the nature and don't think about the world holding you back from doing the mitzvah, but rather in matters of Torah and mitzvahs, a Jew is like, it's like he lives in the world to come already. It's like he's king over the nature. And this ability, this concept of being...
It's balabayit. It's not ba'olam haba, balabayit.
Oh, okay, thank you.
He's in charge of the house.
Thank you. Thank you. The king over the nature. So when we approach Torah and mitzvahs in this way, like a Baal Habayis, like in charge of the home, in charge of nature, like royalty, you will be successful in an easy way, not in the way of milchama, in the way of war. It's not like you're going to be fighting against the Yetzer Hara and the things that are confusing or the distractions that come in our way. Ella b'derech menucha, it'll be in a way of peace. Hu mitromam v'mis'ala l'mayla me'inyanei ha'olam shesavivu, and you will rise above and go beyond all of the different worldly matters, worldly issues that we deal with. Yidu shehu ben mamlechas kohanim, as you know that you are royalty, you're the son of the kings. So even more so, you won't even have these issues in the first place when you're truly focused on your status as royalty. You're not going to even have these distractions and these difficulties. It's not just that you'll rise above them, it's that they don't even exist. Seif Dalid. Amnam aloha adam lishola. A person could ask, the shlema shemedubar al pnimius nishmaso shehi lamaila mehislavshus the goof. Move on. She'ein v'kol shum davar megashmis olam levalvelo tov his kashrus el hakadosh baruch hu. So if we're going to talk about souls, and if we're going to talk in the world of total spirituality, and we're going to talk about the pnimiut, the inner aspects, okay, I understand that my soul is not going to be held back by any distractions or any difficulties in connecting to Hashem. My soul always wants to connect to Hashem. Through doing, and what does it mean to connect to Hashem? Through doing the will of Hashem and doing the mitzvahs. But unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to phrase it, not really, that's my own word put in there, our soul was invested in a body. And it has to deal with the worldly matters. The things that make boundaries for us, the things that make difficulties, the challenges, the confusion, the distractions. So how can you claim that a person can just be like royalty and they can just rise above all of these different matters and all these different issues that we have? How can you truthfully say that through Torah and mitzvahs we can just control everything? So the answer to this is that in every single generation, there is a leader that has these traits of kingship and elevation and royalty. And they give that strength to the individual. To bring this strength out, to arouse within the person in a revealed and obvious way, this royalty. So if we can look to our Nasi, we can rise to that ability. So we know that each one of the Nasiim that was mentioned in the first paragraph, Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov, they were a Nasi and a Melech. They were a ruler and they were royalty. They were elevated and distinct. So because of this, we find with them, there was great wealth and abundance in physical matters. And as well, they had control over nature, and their behavior in general was above nature. I don't know, maybe someone can correct me if the Baal Shem Tov had a lot of wealth, but we know that David HaMelech and Moshe Rabbeinu certainly did. I'm saying physical, but we also know that the Baal Shem Tov very much lived in a way that was above nature. Anhagas Moshe Rabbeinu el b'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim u'b'midbar hayta kula ba'ofen nisi. So the way of Moshe Rabbeinu in the desert was complete miracles. Ba'ofen nisi, it was in a way of total miracles. Af l'David HaMelech, we're gonna come back to that, but just to make it clear right now, and if it's a drop repetitive, you'll forgive me. When the Jews are in the desert, they're eating man, they're eating bread that comes to their hands with no work. Their clothes are growing with them. They have a cloud of glory leading them in front and behind. It's a total, completely miraculous existence. Not to mention the splitting of the Red Sea that they start with. So everything in Moshe's leadership is surrounded by total miracles. After David HaMelech, Hara Kadosh Baruch Hu Nisim v'Niflaot L'lo Heref, Kifi Shirim Anu B'Tfilos V'Hodos Rabos Asher V'Sefer Tehillim. And for David HaMelech, there's continuous miracles and wonders that never end, as we see in all of the prayers and the thanks that he gives in Sefer Tehillim. Which, I mean, my husband's name is Shaul, and he was reading the Tehillim on Shabbos. He says, why is Shaul always trying to kill David? So I don't know, that's your name. But his life was difficult, but there's constant miracles happening throughout his entire kingship. Then Haggis Habal Shem Tov, Hayita Melo B'Nisim V'Niflos, as well as the way of the Baal Shem Tov was filled with wonders and miracles. As related through the many, many stories of the Baal Shem Tov, the Talmidav and his students. So much so that it's an expression in our regular language that when something miraculous or something wondrous happens, we call it a Baal Shem Tovik Maisa, Baal Shem Tovik action stories. Harehem nishpaim lakol echad Yisrael v'memela misgalim bo inyanei hamelach. So these three individuals, each one was a king and gave that influence to the Jewish people in their own unique way. So again, right now we're talking about the commonality between the three of them. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into the distinction, but the starting point is that they had this commonality of kingship and royalty and led in a way that was miraculous and beyond nature. Siv Vav, Lahavin ha'inyan ha'miyuchad asher kol echad mehem Moshe, David, ve'Habal Shem Tov, mashpia lebnei Israel, yesh lahaktim l'va'er techila hisgalu dematan Torah yesh losha inyanim. So before we're gonna delve into the distinction between Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov and what they uniquely influenced on the Jewish people, first we're going to back up. First, initially, we need to just explain the three aspects of revelation that happened at the time of the giving of the Torah. Aleph Etzem, the essential revelation, Hisgalus Elokus b'matan Torah b'irad Hashem al Har Sinai, she'ita lamala legamrei mehateva v'ha'olam v'zehaya rak l'fisha. First, we have the essential revelation of Hashem at the time of the giving of the Torah. Hashem came down onto Mount Sinai, and this was a complete and total overhaul of nature and of the world in general. And this happened just once. This was a unique event that happened just one time and a complete and total enormous revelation. Phase Hatotza v'hapa'ula shel hisgalos zo ba'olam. So next, phase 2 is the result and the action of what actually happened to the world as an effect of this one-time enormous revelation. Shagam la'achrei et b'meshech hayovel, like even after the moment when the Torah was given, throughout the continuing years, the Yovel, so even when there was less of a revelation of the godliness, it no longer existed the revelation of the giving of the Torah. Nonetheless, it had an impact that changed the world and it changed nature so that we would be able to reveal godliness more easily and more readily in the world. It's spoken about in many sichas. The giving of the Torah changed the nature of the world. Before the giving of the Torah, the physical world was not infused with spirituality and holiness the way it was after. And Gimel, the third phase. So phase 1 is this enormous revelation. Phase 2 is the world has now changed, that it's easier to reveal godliness. And phase 3, Gimel, Hatachlis de Matan Torah liyot chibur elyon v'tachton. The purpose of Matan Torah was to be a connection from the above to below, from the celestial worlds to the physical world. Ubelshon hatanya, asota ha'olam hazeh hatachton she'ein tachton lamat mimenu ledira lo yisparach. To make this low world, where there's nothing lower than this world, into a dwelling for Hashem. I'm sure many people learned much about this and spoken about much of this, the concept of a dira lo yisparach, a dwelling for Hashem in this lowest world. Kolomar shagam behelam ha'olam b'makom shabo ein niret v'nikeres elikos chas v'shalom. So even in this dark, difficult place where you don't see and you don't recognize godliness, God forbid, Chashech kaful v'mechupal, a doubled over darkness, shehu malek klipos v'sitra achra, which is filled with impurities and distractions, the opposite of holiness. Shehem neged Hashem mamish, lomar ani v'asviv od, and as if they say, as if it's against Hashem, and it's as if like you feel like you're completely independent. V'yoridu v'yimshucho b'nei Israel es gilu ha'or ha'eloki shel Matan Torah. Nonetheless, in this very, very difficult place, you can bring down and draw out, the Jewish people are able to do this, to bring down and to draw out a revelation of Hashem, the revelation of Hashem that came about from Matan Torah. I was actually just at a learning retreat last week, and Rifki was there, and she made a comment, which I just thought was funny, and it reminded me of this when I read it. Someone asked her, like, something about, like, what are we like in this generation? She's like, in our generation, we're like fish swimming around in a fish tank, philosophizing about whether or not water exists. Like, it's so obvious and it's so there and it's so present, but we're still like wondering, does water exist? So that's how deep the darkness is, that even when we're swimming around in the water in the fish tank, we don't even feel it or we don't even see it. But back to the Sikha, what it's saying is that even in this doubled over darkness, because of the influence and the impact of Matan Torah, we're able to bring out godliness even in that very, very dark place. So just to go back, just really in one sentence, we have three phases. One is the essential revelation. Two is that the world is now a vessel for godliness. The world is now capable of revealing godliness. And three, that even in a very difficult, deep, disconnected time, because of the giving of the Torah, we're able to bring out godliness. Shlosha, so Seiv Zayin, Shlosha inyanim elu ba'im liyadei bitui bechlalos, v'shlosha tekuvot ba'am Yisrael, b'zman dor hamidbar, b'zman sheyo Yisrael yushvim al admasam, u'b'zman hagalas. So these three concepts are related to three different times that the Jewish people have been through. The first one is the time of living in the desert, of traveling in the desert. The second is the time that we lived in the land of Israel during the time of the Beit HaMikdash. And the third is our time, the time of exile. Etzel b'nei Yisrael v'dor hamidbar, asher kablu es haTorah b'hiusam nishamos begufim, nishar beguli me'ayin hiskala shel Matan Torah gam la'achareza. So when the Jewish people were living in the Midbar, in the desert, when they received the Torah as souls within bodies, there remained a revelation of Matan Torah even after that, a kind of revelation. They lived in this miraculous state. When they lived in the desert, they were completely separated, distinct from having to worry about any worldly matters. And they lived in a way that was above nature, in a miraculous state where they didn't have to engage with any like physical issues. They were above that the whole time that they were in the desert. So they were able to completely and totally dedicate themselves to Torah and to holiness. As the rabbis say, the Torah was given only to people who ate man, meaning this bread that was completely heavenly and came with didn't require any physical labor. And the time of the desert was a time of complete miraculousness, which is going to connect to our phase one, the etzem, the total like strong revelation of godliness at the time of giving of the Torah. Now, phase two, which was that the world has now become a place where it's easier to reveal godliness. Eretz Israel, nichnasu b'nei Israel la'eretz noshevet. So when they came to Israel, they came to a settled land. L'seder chaim ba'ofen tivi. And it was a natural place where they're going to have to plow the field and plant. Nonetheless, even though it was a natural place, the hashgacha ha'elyona, the providence from Hashem was revealed, was more clear and more obvious. Eretz asher Hashem Elokecha doreshata tamid einei Hashem Elokecha ba mereshis Hashana va'ad achris Hashana. As the pasuk says, this is the land that Hashem has given to you, where the eye of Hashem is constantly there from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. Ba'afilo avodas ha'adama. I just want to if you don't mind, indulge me like a teeny anecdote. I remember somebody once explaining how you're walking down the street in Spot and you see someone you know and you say, Shtacha pratis. Or you see someone you're talking about. I was just talking about you. And this is in a time of gullus, but you still have that feeling where you're walking down the street in New York and you see someone you know that you were just talking about, and you say, "Oh, hi." There's a certain revelation, a certain feeling of godliness, and now and obviously this doesn't even compare whatsoever to what it was like in the time of David HaMelech and the time of the Beis HaMikdash. But I think we can maybe use our imagination just based on those types of ideas to understand that even though they were living in a world of nature where they had to plow the fields, there was a real feeling of Hashem's providence in the land. And even with regard to working the land, zera v'katzir lo yisro, so that they had to plant and plow, etc. It was in a way that the waters of the sky from the heavens will come down. And you could see in a revealed and obvious way that it was Hashem that was giving livelihood and feeding everybody. The Mamela Yadua, the Biur She's Askus, the Kol Asher Ta'aseh, Eina Ela Asias Kli Kabbalah Avor Inyan, the Birkecha Hashem Lekecha Haba Milamayla. And it was clear and obvious that all that you do is nothing more than just making a vessel for Hashem to fill. And as the pasuk says, and Hashem gave the bracha, it came from above. So it was a little bit less than the midbar. You still had to work the field. You weren't getting the man from Shemayim, but it was extremely obvious that all that you were doing was being fulfilled by Hashem. Now comes phase 3, which is our time. Aval b'zman hagalus, in the dark, difficult exile. Ototenu lo ra'inu v'gomer, where we don't see Hashem at all. Ad she'alul Yehudi la'alos b'daso chas v'shalom. To the point where a Jew could, God forbid, come to the point she'afu natun tachat mamshalas gidrei hateva, kamo eno Yehudi, as if he is like completely subject to the ways of nature, like a regular non-Jewish person. And that's why we need to work really hard to destroy I don't know, destroy is the right word, but the concealment, and to reveal Hashem in this world. That we need to break through the barriers to see Hashem. So it's not just that we need to work, we need to struggle, but we need to really push ourselves to see the godliness in the world. Sif Ches. V'hina inyan zeh shehagalos matan Torah hayta rak lefi sha'a hu rak b'nogei le'peulas ha'ba'olam b'chlal. So even though in the world, in the physical world, matan Torah would just happen once, however, within Aval b'nogea la'am Yisrael, however, within the Jewish nation, hina gilui zeh shel matan Torah kava b'hem la'olam. It was transformational. It was established forever as a transformational moment that has its impact forever upon the Jewish people. In what capacity? As a tchuna de mamlachas kohanim, that it made us all into royalty. It made us all into mamlachas kohanim, to like the royalty of the priest. Shekol echad b'nei Yisrael, the kol matzav shabo yimatzeh v'pnimios nafsho hu lamala legamrei megidrei ha'olam shesavivo ve'eno mishuaved klal legidrei hateva. That each and every single one of us, each individual Jew, in every situation that they're in, they can find deep within their soul that they are above the boundaries of this world that surround them, and they are not subject to the laws of nature. Hanizkar la'ayel, as mentioned above, hugam hachiluk asher bein hashpad inyan hamlucha v'hanesius mamlachas kohanim shehishpiu Moshe, David, v'habal Shem Tov b'nei Israel hachidush b'kol echad mehem. So as mentioned above, this, as we're going to continue to learn and to discuss, is the difference between the impact and the kingship of Moshe, David, and the Baal Shem Tov upon the Jewish people. And now we're going to talk about the distinction that comes from each one of those leaders. Moshe Rabbeinu, she'al yado netinas haTorah. So we're going to start with Moshe Rabbeinu. Through him, we were given the Torah. Va'ad shenikra al shmo. So much so that the Torah is sometimes called with his name. Ha'al v'hashpia al b'nei dobro shekiblu et Torah neshamas begufim kanal. And he had an impact on his generation, which the generation that physically received the Torah as souls within bodies. Sheyair bahem inyan mamlechas kohanim megashmias kipshuto, that they themselves were in the most physical, straightforward, tangible way. It was revealed within them that they were kings, each and every single individual. And kiblu at kol tzarcheihem lamayla. How was this revealed to them? How was this obvious and clear? Everything they needed came from above. B'li amal v'yagia, without any work or effort or hardship. As I think I said a few times, the man and the clothing, etc. L'kol echad mehem hayta ashirus v'harchava. Each individual had tremendous wealth in abundance. The seder hachayim shalahem it's nahel be'ofen nisi kanal. And their entire life was miraculous, as explained above. Every incident, every moment was a miraculous moment. So they, in the most practical, straightforward way, lived like kings. Ach, the Kenisasam Eretz Israel. However, it changed a little bit when they came into the land of Israel. Eretz Noshevet, a land that was settled. Nifsak haman lechem min hashamayim. The man stopped, the bread from the heavens. And they had to now get engaged and busy themselves with regular mundane work. As the pasuk says, Kitavo el haaretz v'gomer sheish shanim tezret sadecha v'gomer. When you come to the land for 6 years, you will plow your fields, you will plant your fields. V'hagam shebe'eretz Yisrael hashgacha ha'elyona ki be'ofen gilui moresh she'la amaso shel davar nitana haparnasa milamayla kanal. Nonetheless, they did have to plant the fields, but it was such an obvious connection to Hashem. It was clear to everyone that the growth and the produce and that which came from it came from Hashem, came through the bracha from Shemayim. Mikol makom ha'gufa shehadam osak b'siyas kli al pi derech hateva lebracha Hashem alul letachat makom lesavara shegam lehis asuko yash tfesos magam b'yitziras shefa parnasato v'meimela yachol hadavar legulo metorah mitzvos. Nonetheless, one could still think it was their own work. When a person works hard and they do it through the ways of nature, and the blessing of Hashem comes, there's still room for the person to think that it was because of everything that I did, that's why I got the livelihood. And there's still a space that a person can get confused and get distracted and get pushed, distance from Torah and mitzvahs. V'zeu chidush shel David HaMelech. So this is what was unique about David HaMelech. Shenatan et hakol shegam be'eretz noshevet yihye b'yachoto Yehudi lehavi lidei gilui as hayoto bo lemamlechas kohanim. That not only in the desert where everything was being provided and their whole lifestyle was miraculous, but even in a settled land, a Jew could bring himself to this level of a total revelation, and he could feel the presence of Hashem in such a strong and meaningful way. The point of feeling the mamlechas kohanim, the royalty. Hilomar sheyavo li'idei hakara sheparnasato ba'ach v'rach milamayla. The point that the person can see that their livelihood comes only from Hashem. V'memela harei be'emet hi gam b'harchava, and as well in abundance. V'asher hi b'shorsha u'b'nimiusa inyan nisi she'eno shayach l'darchei hateva. And they can even begin to think and to recognize that it's miraculous that even though the wheat is sprouting because I plowed the field, etc., nonetheless, it's a miraculous occurrence. And it's all because of Hashem. His asuko b'teva he rak lefi shekachu ratzon habora sheyeh hadavar be'ofen shel b'kol asher taseh. And it's only because it's the will of Hashem, and all that Hashem is involved in all, ways, in all that you do. So David Hamelech's impact or his Nisias had to be maybe in a little bit of a stronger way, perhaps. I don't know if stronger is the right word, that unlike the time of the desert, where it's clear and obvious to everyone, in the time of living in Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't as clear, but through the Nisias of David Hamelech, it brought that recognition to people's lives. The Memela Muban Shabashasha Amdim Lefanav Inyanim Shel Torah Mitzvos Harehu Mekaimim Bli Shum Bilbulim Kehanakaso Shel Melach Ineskar La'ayil Seif Gimel. And what does this accomplish? This recognition that all of my needs really come from Hashem, that in the time when I need to keep Torah and mitzvahs, I will do it without any distraction, without any difficulties, without any complications, like a king. This is what I need to do, and I'll go straight to take care of my needs and to take care of Torah and mitzvahs, as mentioned above in Seif Gimel. Test, now we're going to talk about our times. Vehina la'acharei she'tchil chosha chagalas, ubefrat bizman shechosha chagalas nisgaver v'naseh amok yoter. However, when the darkness starts to get really thick and the exile is really bad, especially in a time where the darkness of exile is so strong and it's so deep. Ba'azei mitzad so ka'itim na'asu Yisrael shekuyim lo rak asiyus malachas stam ela bitardus haparnasa nidrash netina koach chadasha va'na'alis yoter kedei la'or b'bnei Yisrael iskala shel inyanei melech. So in such hard times, it needs a greater strength. And because of the times, the Jewish people are shekuim. They're stressed. It's a difficult time, not just because of the hard work, but also the difficulties in making parnasa, and the annoyances, the complications. So they need a new and a stronger and a greater strength in order to arouse within them the revelation and the feeling of being a king. Sorry if my translation was a little bit choppy. The idea is that when it's so difficult, we need more strength to tap into to recognize Hashem. A person at these difficult, challenging times might think, alamus v'hestarim al kiyum haTorah mitzvos, as a kiyum haTorah mitzvos al derech haragil hadei v'hoter. A person might think that just keeping Torah and mitzvos is more than enough. Sharei afu haruch b'milchama kasha v'bigia rabbi kedei legabor al kashim v'cholo, because they're like in a difficult battle, in a difficult war, and just trying to do the basics, just trying to keep Torah mitzvahs is hard enough. And if a person will actually do a little bit more, and they'll add to the mitzvah, and they'll add to their learning of Torah, they might feel like they've done even more than enough. However, so not just fulfilling my basic obligations, and maybe even a little bit above my basic obligations, but how in such a difficult time can a person feel like a king? Like they're approaching the mitzvahs like royalty. As if all the worldly matters, the distractions, the complications, the difficulties, they don't even exist. So this now comes the Baal Shem Tov, and he says that even in this deep, deep galus, in this deep exile, a Jewish person can still rise above all his surroundings, as Hayoto ben lemamlechas kohanim, and feel as if they are a king. Shakadosh Baruch Hu ba'atzmo b'hashgacha pratis b'tachlis noheg imo b'ofen nisi b'chaye hayom yom b'kol prat b'prat. That Hashem himself, with his divine providence, in all ways is with him every single day, detail upon detail. Zu, and this impact, this influence, lagalus as inyan mamlechas kohanim, to bring out royalty in these really, really difficult, challenging times. Etzel b'nei Yisrael b'zman hagalus, for the Jewish people in exile. Yesh ba chiddush ve'ilu b'inyan hamalchus, hagedolim yoter mishnei matzavin hakodmim. There needs to be a distinction, a chiddush, in the concept of royalty. It's something more powerful and more unique from the two previous phases. The phase one in the desert, where all of my needs are met miraculously at all times. Phase two, living in Israel, where my needs are met. I do have to work, but it's clear and obvious that Hashem is present. And now we need it even a more stronger way. Inyan zeh, sheyehudi yechol la'alot ma'al ha'olam v'hateva, v'heyota b'midbar, muvdal ma'ha'olam, or afilu ba'olam aval b'makom sheyesh bo gilu elakos. So this, as I just said outside, this concept that a Jew can rise above the nature, beyond when he's in the desert, when he's distinct from the world, or beyond when he's living in a time where it's very obvious that Hashem is engaged in our lives, in Eretz Yisrael. Eino mitbata es ha'eder hagbala shebekoach hamalchus. There, when you don't see any lack or in the strength of the kingship, asher ba'adam Yisrael, ki b'matzim elo milachatchila einhu mishuabed kokach lehagbalas olam hazeh. In those two situations, the desert and Eretz Yisrael, he's not so enslaved to the boundaries of this world. The dafka behil the halcho b'derech hanhagazu bisman hagalas harei hadavar meid al yechoto lalos v'lalechet. But however, in the times of galus, in these times, that when a person acts in this way, in the way that we've been discussing, in the way of kingship and royalty, bisman hagalus, in the time of galus, it gives the person the strength and the ability to rise and to go. As we know, the expression, the chatkila riber, when you come to a challenge, the expression of the Rebbe Maharash, you just rise above, you go above the challenge. Shalo besader v'hadraga, not necessarily step by step with an organized plan of how am I going to deal with this, but just boom, just go above the challenge. Ela lamaila the gamer b'medida v'hagbala, without any boundaries, without any calculations and holding back. The umek choshav hagalas ad l'madrega ha'elyona shel mamlechas kohanim, from way above from within the darkness of the exile to a place that is above, to a place of royalty. You know, this famous story with the Frierdiker Rebbe when there was a decree against Jewish education, and he walks right into the parliament building in Russia as just without being stopped, walks right in like a king, and he takes the stamp that is on the desk of the education minister, and he stamps the paper that the decree has been declined, and he puts it in the next pile, and he walks right out. People know I didn't prepare the story to share, but it just coming to mind, like just within such difficult, terrible times, just coming in like a king, so to speak, walking right in, and just completely miraculous that such a thing should happen. So where does that strength come from? Within the darkness. So Chelek Yud, Seif Yud. Ach hina peshita de'ein lomar chas v'shalom zechidish v'pula shel Moshe David Baal Shem Tov hayar rak l'bnei Yisrael shebe'oto hador. We cannot say simply that the uniqueness of Moshe, Baal Shem Tov, and David was only for the specific generation that they existed within. So it's not necessarily Moshe was for the earlier times, David was for the later times, and the Baal Shem Tov was for our times. Or rak l'tuv kuvas hakolish shechayu behem, Moshe bedor midbar, David beyos Yisrael be'eretz Yisrael, Baal Shem Tov beyos Yisrael b'zman hagalus. You cannot say that each leader is limited to his generation. Ki pe'ulasam shel Moshe, David b'Baal Shem Tov nitzach hisi, because each leader is still present, is still eternal. Their influence is still continuing. B'mega'as l'kol b'nei Yisrael b'kol doros, and each person's impact has a connection to each Jew within every generation. V'lachen nikra Moshe al yedei kol b'nei Yisrael Moshe Rabbeinu, as we see that every single person in all generations call him Moshe, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu. Al David HaMelech Omer Kol Adam Yisrael David Melech Chai V'Kayam, and the same with David HaMelech, King David. We all say Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. He's the king of Israel that is alive and well. Even today we say that Gamata. The Kevan Shabias HaMashiach Talui Bazeh Shefutzu Ma'necha Shel Baal Shem Tov Chutza. And so too with the coming of Mashiach is dependent on that the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov will be spread out worldly. So we have this ongoing connection to all three at all times. Move on to Inyan Nogei L'Kol Adam Yisrael B'Kol Adora. So it's clear that this is connected to all Jewish people in all generations. Ela Kashem Shechidish Shel Kol Echad Mehem Udgash B'Ofen Klali Be'Echad Mishlosh Tufos Klalis. So since we know that the unique Chiddush, the novel capacity of each one of them is connected to each one of us at all three concepts. So it can be split within each generation to three types of people. And don't worry, it can be split internally within ourselves to three aspects of myself. So there's three general groups of people, but then each of these three exists individually within each one of us. Avodas Hashem nechaleket b'klalos l'shlosha sugim. So serving Hashem in general is split into three categories: Torah, avoda, v'gemilas chasadim. Torah, prayer, and good deeds. Ma'aseh hamitzvos, hakol atzah sibuim. Good deeds, gemilas chasadim in general is a reference to mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs. V'kol derkecha de'ehu, v'kol ma'asecha yehiyu l'shem shamayim. In all ways you should know them, and all your actions should be for the sake of heaven. Shem al derech shloshes ofanei ha'avoda, v'shloshes hazmanim hanal. Midbar, Eretz Yisrael, and Zman Galus. So these three things of Torah, avoda, and gemilas chasadim, learning, davening, and mitzvahs, can be connected to the desert, Eretz Yisrael, and the time of Galus. A Torah hi gilu chachmaso yisbarach. What is the Torah? The Torah is a revelation of Hashem's wisdom. The inyan limud haTorah hu b'derech milamala lamata. And how does that happen? Generally, learning Torah is from above to below. L'galus es chachmaso v'ratzoni yisbarach lamata. We're taking this divine godly wisdom, this inspiration from above, and we're learning it, we're understanding it, and we're revealing it down here below. And therefore, through learning Torah, the person is elevated above the world. Just like the Jews in the desert. So in that sense, through learning Torah, a person is like a king. They're elevated above the world. As the rabbis say, our teachers are like kings, hamoshel v'sholet al hateva, like one who has control over nature. As the rabbis explain on the pasuk la'el gomer alai. Tefillah inyaneya, so phase 2, or the second aspect of avoda, tefillah, inyanei b'kashet tzarchav. So what is prayer? We're asking for our needs, the needs of the prayer, shel hamikalo. Hu amnam chash she'hakadosh baruch hu she'misapek et tzarchav al derech hanal b'nogei le'eretz Yisrael. He's asking that Hashem should fulfill his needs in the way of when the Jews lived in Eretz Yisrael. Like, I have a need, I'm going to go to Hashem for that need. I don't need to go anywhere else for that need. I go to Hashem for that need. So it's a recognition that my need comes from Hashem. Aval mikol makom hu shakua b'tzarchav. But nonetheless, I do have a need. I am lacking sarchav shalom. It's what I am lacking. Sharehu mitpalel v'mepesh yitmalech hasrono. And I'm going to daven and I'm going to ask that my need, my lacking is filled. Which is why I think it's a good idea to think about, like, when we daven, that we daven for our physical and our practical needs. You don't, obviously, I think we all know, but just to say it out loud, we don't only daven for spiritual things, we daven for a new car if you need a new car, because everything is from Hashem. Aval gam avodas hatefila hi ba'ofen she'ein lemipel adayin esek b'advarim gashmim kmo shehem mitzad ha'olam. Nonetheless, davening, we're still davening about physical things, and we're connected to the physical world. Al derech yeshivas b'nei Yisrael al admasam ish tachat gafno v'tachat teino. As it says in the pasuk, that in the lands of Israel, each man sat under his grape tree and under his fig tree, meaning each person's needs were being met. Below bein umos ha'olam. And not amongst the other nations. Each person had dominion over his little plot of land. But my connections to the world was not was that I need to ask Hashem to fill my needs. The Ma'aseh HaMitzvos. So that was phase 2 prayer. Now phase 3, the Gmilut Chasadim, or the doing of mitzvahs. And that's it, al yedei dvarim gashmim. They're done through physical things. And basically what we're being tasked to do is to elevate things that we're allowed to engage with. Not necessarily things we must engage with per se, but things we're allowed to. And the purpose, the service of humankind, is to purify and to transform the world and the darkness, gashmius ha'olam, the physical aspects of the world, she'ya'ir behem or hakdusha, that they should reveal a holiness. Al derech zman hagalus, b'nei Yisrael mitzurim bein umos ha'olam kolo, like a time of galus when we're living amongst the nations. So in phase 2, in the time of Tzipa, they're not living amongst the nations. Each man has his own plot of land in Israel, and I'm still asking Hashem for my physical needs. But here in the time of Galus, we're amongst the nations, and we need to reveal the godliness from within the physical. Just a quick look at footnote 56. This is the difference also between Torah and Tefillah and mitzvahs. I'm just going to skip to the end of it. The Torah is biur milamala lamata. The Torah it comes from above to below. The derech menucha v'shalom, in a way of peace and a way of like ease. Tefillah hi milamata lamayla. Prayer is from above to below. V'chen hi b'derech milchama, in a way of war. I'm struggling. Aval mikevan shehi al yedei gili or hi cherev shel shalom. But because it's a time of revelation of light, it's a sword of peace. So it is a war. It is a struggle. I am asking for my needs. And if we're going to go to the times of Israel, I'm asking for water to come down to plant my field. But it's a cherev shel olam. It's a sword of peace. Avoda im dvarim gashmiyim chulo hi b'derech milchama mamish. But the avoda, the service with physical objects, is true war. Nahama ufum chaver mitzvahs, doing mitzvahs for the world. It's a true difficult war against distractions and complications. Yud Aleph. V'zehu inyan hamalchus shemoshe David v'Baal Shem Tov mashpiim l'kol echad mibnei Yisrael b'kol dor v'dor. So this is the concept of the different types of influence that Moshe and David and the Baal Shem Tov had for each and every generation. Moshe, who's the midbar, the desert, miraculous, and he's Torah. Torah, Poel the Magala es etzem inyan mamlachos kohanim, the Bnei Israel. He represents Torah, and he's the one that brought out the essence of the royalty mamlachos kohanim within the Jewish people. Zehu hasub demaimrei Torah, hameforshim min haolam v'torasam emunasam. And these are the types of people, and again, it could be like the part of me that's separated from the world. The Torah is their craft. Aleim amru ma'an malech rabbanim. As they're like the kings, they are like kings. People that are engrossed in Torah on a regular basis. And this also connects not just to one group of people, but every single person. When a person makes set times to study Torah, that he's able to go above himself completely. as in Yanei Ha'olam v'da'agosehem, that during those times of studying Torah, the person can rise above their worries and their, issues, their worldly issues, v'leshakua b'limud Torah mamish kapi shetorso emunaso, and be engaged in Torah entirely to the point that Torah is his craft. I just say, like, if you ever in yeshiva for a period of time, or I was just fortunate to be at Beis Chana for a couple of days, and you're just engaged in Torah the whole time, and you're just not worried about anything, and everything makes perfect sense, and it's just, a Torah atmosphere. In stage 3, you said there's strength to jump over. Where does that strength come from? It comes from the Baal Shem Tov, but let's continue, and maybe you'll share a thought with us as we go on. It comes from the Nasi. The Nasi is the one that gives us that strength. David, so phase 2, Tefillah, which is Tefillah, V'lechan nichtav sefer Tehillim al yado, and the book of Tehillim is written by him. Po'el mitzad inyan hamalchus shabo. This comes from the royalty within him. Shagam avoda zo tia be'ofen shel malchus, because this is also in the way of royalty. Because when the person asks for his needs, those needs are met immediately. So I was a little bit, I had a little bit of question on this. I spoke to my husband about it. I'm sure that other people might have some ideas, but the prayer of David HaMelech is distinct from regular prayers, we're going to see in the next paragraph, because his prayer is in a way that everything he asks for is filled. In the brackets, lo ketfila al derech haragil, not like ordinary prayer, shebahayoto bakasha haba mitzad hamata, where the request comes from down here. Efshar shiyu minus v'ikuvim, there could be motivations or delays, v'habakasha lo tismala, and the request will not be filled. Or al kopanim shavor meshach zman ad limila, or maybe like a period of time will pass until it's filled. Until it's fulfilled and completed in its full way. So my husband said that he thinks the Sikha is saying, and maybe someone has a different thought, is that the prayer of David is potential that he brought into this world, a capacity that we all have, that we can reach that level of davening like kings, that our wishes are just immediately, or our requests, not our wishes, are immediately fulfilled. Whereas regular prayer, sometimes we get the answer right away, sometimes we don't, and sometimes there's a delay, and sometimes we might be asking for something that isn't really like appropriate for us to be having, or we don't really need, or isn't meant for us. Whereas David brought into the world this aspect of prayer on a much higher level. Taketh miyad umiyad lishum hagbalos uminios betachlis hashlemus. So skipping that concept of what ordinary prayer is, the prayer of David immediately, without any boundaries or distractions or personal motivations, it'll be fulfilled completely, just like the request of a king. And it'll be done like through Torah, as explained in the Zohar. Amar Torah al hapasa kina mato v'gomar v'miyad hifil gashmei bracha v'yordin b'ofen hanirtza. That when the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, wanted to bring rains, he said words of Torah. He said hine matov, and right away the rains came down in the way that he wanted. V'lachen yash b'sefer Tehillim tfilas David shnei hakatzavot. Therefore, as we're still talking about David, it says in Tehillim, there are 2 lines that inyan shall tehilot v'tachbonot ke inyan hatfila v'yachedim ze harehu echad mechafdal tzifrei Torah shektav lechen peulas hi al derech peula shel haTorah. That Tehillim is 2 concepts. Tehillim is prayer and it's Torah. It's words of prayer that David is writing to Hashem, but it's also part of the 24 books of Tanakh. So it encompasses both things. And lastly, Habal Shem Tov Gila, and maybe this will answer the question that was posted in the chat, or hopefully, Habal Shem Tov Gila et Achduso Yisparech Be'olam. The Baal Shem Tov brought about this oneness of Hashem in the entire world. Asher amitus hametzius shel kol nivrahu devar havai. That the realness and the actual existence of every single thing is the word of Hashem. So one of my favorite stories there's many stories, but I love this story, that the Berditchever and the Alter Rebbe are at the grand chasa and Zhlobin of the chasan of their grandchildren, and they are on one side of a wall and they need to be on the other side of the wall. And they're called to come to the front where they need to get to the other side of the wall. So they say to each other, should we walk through the wall? And as far as I know, there are two versions of the story, that they did or they didn't. But either way, it seems that they could have. Why could they walk through a wall? Because a wall doesn't have an existence on its own. A wall, especially in the vantage of a tzaddik, who's seeing the world in its truest way, is nothing other than Devar Hashem, the word of Hashem. It's not a physical entity to a tzaddik. So they're able to reveal within the world this concept that all of our physical things, all aspects in this world are Devar Hashem, or the word of Hashem. That keep it alive and enliven it and give it life force in each moment. And this, the Baal Shem Tov brought out in the way of Torah, by giving an explanation to a pasuk, so not just a story, but actually bringing out through the words of Torah. The Ayadei, meaning that sort of wraps it all around, that Tehillim is wrapped up in Torah, and the concept of godliness being the essence of everything in the physical world is also wrapped back around into the concept of Torah. And through this, each and every Jew has the power, the ability, that even when they are held back and bothered by physical matters, and sometimes in the challenges of the world, and even in their own situation, otios lo ra'inu, where you don't see Hashem's presence, the gomer of the melech habiur korach b'mil, and this refinement has to come in a way of war. Harehu oseh milchamato ba'ofen shel mamlechas kohanim. The war that has to happen sometimes, the battle, the struggle that we all have, the challenge is in a way of royalty. Kavar b'yatzias l'milchama yodesha. What does that mean to go out to war as a king? That before you even go out, you know you're going to be victorious. You go out like a king. I will rise above my enemies. And where does this come? This victory come? This comes from above. And Hashem will give you the enemy into your hands. And through this, you will be victorious. And I'm sorry, I'm not translating the pasuk properly. Hu notel v'mayla es hanitzu teloki sheyu shaboy b'dvarim hagashmim. And you will elevate the godliness that is within the physical item. Shebegaluso ad asher eshapcha chashuka l'nahira v'miriru l'mataka. Until you have transformed the darkness into light and the bitterness into sweet. L'chaim.
Thank you very much, Tzipa.
Thanks for tuning in.
Very much.
Thank you.
Good food for thought for Shavuos. Plenty of things about. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Beautiful Sicha.
Chag Sameach.
Amen. To you too.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. A good Yom Tov to everyone.
Good, Yanta.